This is HOA boardroom battles. They wanted control. Karen yelled that I was trespassing in my own parking spot and that the HOA had jurisdiction now. "The clock is running and you are feeding it," she shouted, her face 6 inches from mine, a folded policy sheet waving in the air like a weapon. I stood next to my sedan in the Heritage Oaks Landing Association lot, Savannah heat pressing down through cloudy sky that threatened to storm. And I could already see the tow truck idling at the gate. Gloria Turner, vice president of the HOA board, wore a white windbreaker with the hood pushed back, a tiny body camera clipped to her jacket, and a pink baseball cap pulled low. Her brown shoulder-length hair swung as she jabbed a finger at my windshield. "No guest pass, no resident permit, no decal. You are in violation of Section 9.4, and I have the authority to remove your vehicle immediately." I work as a telecom project coordinator, which means I live in spreadsheets and logs, and I know what a paper trail looks like. I moved into Heritage Oaks Landing 6 weeks ago after a job transfer, and the HOA promised me a resident decal within 10 business days. It never came. Instead, I got an email blast 2 days ago framing me as the one resident who refuses community standards. And now Gloria was standing in front of my car with a tow authorization slip in her hand and a vendor on speed dial. "I need to see the written rule," I said, keeping my voice flat. Gloria's face twisted. "I do not need your explanation. I need your payment." She pulled a violation notice from her windbreaker pocket and slapped it on my hood. The notice had a date stamp from 3 days ago, but the photo attached showed my car parked in this exact spot yesterday morning. I recognized the angle because a neighbor was washing his truck in the background, and that happened yesterday. The date was wrong. Gloria knew it was wrong. She smiled. "You have until 5 o'clock today to pay the fine and the tow prep fee, or your vehicle gets impounded. The tow yard closes at 6. If your car is taken, you cannot recover it until tomorrow, and the storage fees start immediately." She turned and walked toward the gatehouse, her phone already at her ear. I heard her say, "Yeah, we are clear for pickup." I pulled out my phone and started taking pictures. The violation notice. The windshield with no guest pass visible, because I never needed one. The empty spot next to mine where another resident parked without a decal and never got a notice. I took a picture of the tow truck, and I took a picture of Gloria walking away. Then I opened the HOA group chat and scrolled back 3 weeks. There it was. A thread where Gloria and 2 other board members coordinated a targeted enforcement wave. They picked 5 residents who had complained about other issues, and they decided to hit us all with parking violations on the same day. Gloria wrote, "If we make it expensive enough, they will either pay or leave." Someone else wrote, "Let us focus on the new guy first. He does not know the system yet." I screenshot the entire thread and saved it to 3 different cloud accounts. Then I called the management company. A woman answered on the 3rd ring and said, "Heritage Oaks Landing. This is Dana." I told her my name and my address and said, "I need to report a fraudulent towing order." She went quiet for a second. Then she said, "Hold on. I heard papers rustling." She came back and said, "We show a violation notice filed by Gloria Turner on the 18th. I said, "That notice has a backdated photo and the enforcement is selective." I have screenshots of the board coordinating this in the group chat. "Can you put a hold on the tow?" Dana paused. She said, "I can flag it, but I cannot stop the vendor if they are already on site. You need to file a formal dispute and request a hearing." I said, "How long does that take?" She said, 10 business days. I said, "The tow yard closes in 2 hours." I hung up and walked toward the tow truck. The driver was a middle-aged guy in a gray uniform, standing next to the wheel lift, and he had a clipboard. I said, "Can I see the authorization?" He handed it over without a word. The paperwork said the HOA had reported my vehicle as blocking emergency access. I looked around. My car was in a numbered residence spot 20 feet from the nearest fire lane, and there was nothing blocked. I said, "This is not accurate." He shrugged. He said, "I just go where they tell me. If you have a problem, you need to talk to whoever called it in." I said, "Who signed the authorization?" He pointed to a signature line. It said Gloria Turner, Vice President. I took a picture of the clipboard and handed it back. Gloria was standing at the gatehouse now, talking to someone through the window. I walked over. She saw me coming and stepped in front of the gate control panel like she was guarding it. I said, "You told the tow company I am blocking emergency access. That is a lie." She crossed her arms. "I do not need your explanation. I need your payment." Same line, same tone. I said, "I have screenshots of the board chat where you planned this." She did not blink. She said, "Those are private communications and you are not authorized to record them." I said, "It is a group chat. I am in the group." She said, "You are in violation of community standards, and if you do not move your vehicle, I will add obstruction charges." I said, "The tow driver already has the authorization. You cannot add charges after the fact." She smiled again, and this time it was ugly. She said, "Watch me. I will bury you in notices until you run out of printer ink." I turned and walked back to my car. The tow driver was hooking up the wheel lift. I said, "How much to cancel the tow right now?" He said, "You have to settle it with them. I do not take payments." I said, "Can you at least wait 10 minutes? He looked at his watch. He said, "I have 3 more calls tonight. If you are not resolved in 5 minutes, I am taking it." I nodded and pulled out my phone again. I called my buddy Marcus, who used to be on the HOA board before Gloria and her crew took over. He answered on the first ring. I said, "Gloria's trying to tow me on fake paperwork." He said, "Of course she is. What do you need?" I said, "Witness, advice, anything." He said, "I will be there in 10 minutes. Record everything. If she is lying about emergency access, that is a liability issue and the management company will freak out." I started recording video. I held the phone low and walked around my car, narrating the whole scene. Resident parking spot. Number 42. No fire lane within 20 feet, no emergency access blocked, vehicle legally parked with current registration. I panned to the tow truck. Driver preparing to lift vehicle under authorization signed by Gloria Turner, Vice President, claiming false emergency access violation. Then I walked to the next row of spots. 3 cars, no decals, no citations, no tow trucks. I recorded all 3 plates and zoomed in on the windshields. Nothing. I walked back to my car, and the driver was lowering the wheel lift under my rear axle. Gloria came back with 2 other board members. One was an older guy in a polo shirt, and the other was a woman in yoga gear. Gloria pointed at me and said, "He is recording without consent." The polo shirt guy said, "That is a violation of privacy policy." I said, "I am on HOA property recording an enforcement action. That is legal." The yoga woman said, "You need to turn that off." I said no. Gloria pulled out her phone and started recording me. She said, "If you are allowed to record, so am I." Fine. I kept my phone pointed at the tow truck. The driver looked uncomfortable. He said, "Look, if this is turning into a thing, I am going to need you all to step back." Gloria said, "He is trespassing, and you have full authority to remove the vehicle." The driver said, "Ma'am, if there is a dispute about the authorization, I need to call my supervisor." Gloria's face went red. She said, "You do not need to call anyone. You have the signed paperwork." He said, "Yeah, but if he is saying it is false, I need to cover myself." He pulled out his radio and walked toward the gate. Marcus pulled up in his truck and parked across 2 spots near the entrance. He got out, saw the tow truck, and walked straight to me. He said, "What is the status?" I said, "Driver is calling his supervisor because Gloria claimed emergency access and it is obviously not true." Marcus looked at the tow truck, looked at my car, and looked at Gloria. He said, "Gloria, you know this is not an emergency access violation." She said, "Stay out of this, Marcus. This is board business." He said, "I am a homeowner and I am allowed to witness enforcement actions." She said, "You are not on the board anymore." He said, "That does not matter. If you are lying on the authorization, The association is liable. She stepped closer to him and said, I do not need your explanation. I need your payment. He laughed. He said, that does not even make sense. I am not the one being towed. The driver came back and said, my supervisor says I need written confirmation that this is an emergency access issue before I can proceed. If it is not, and the homeowner files a complaint, we get fined by the county. Gloria said, I am the vice president and I am giving you written confirmation right now. She pulled the folded policy sheet from her pocket and shoved it in the driver's face. He took it, unfolded it, and read it. He said, this is your HOA parking policy. It does not say anything about the specific vehicle or emergency access. Gloria said, it does not need to. I have the authority to enforce it. He handed the paper back and said, ma'am, I am not taking the car without proper documentation. He walked to the wheel lift controls and started raising the cradle back up. Gloria screamed. She said, you are in breach of contract. I will have your company blacklisted from every HOA in Chatham County. The driver ignored her and kept working. Marcus leaned over and said, she is going to hit you with more violations now. You need to get ahead of this. I said I already filed a dispute with the management company. He said, that is not enough. You need to request a formal hearing and you need to bring evidence that she is targeting you. I pulled up the screenshots on my phone and showed him the group chat thread. He read it, shook his head and said, this is gold. Print this and submit it as an exhibit. If the board minutes show Gloria pushed the policy through without proper notice, you can argue selective enforcement and get the whole thing tossed. I said, how do I get the board minutes? He said, public record. You can request them from the management company. It takes a few days, but they have to provide them. The tow truck driver finished releasing my car and drove off without another word. Gloria stood in the middle of the parking lot, her face purple, her tiny body camera still recording. She pointed at me and said, you think you won something? You did not. I am filing a new violation right now for obstruction and harassment. She turned and walked toward the office building at the edge of the complex. The polo shirt guy and the yoga woman followed her. Marcus said, let her file whatever she wants. You have everything you need to bury her. I said I do not want to bury her. I just want her to leave me alone. He said that is not how this works. She is not going to stop until she either wins or loses everything. You need to decide if you are going to fight or fold. I said I am not folding. I went back to my apartment and printed the screenshots. I also printed the violation notice with the backdated photo, and I printed the tow authorization with the false emergency access claim. Then I wrote a formal dispute letter and emailed it to the management company with all the attachments. I requested a hearing, and I requested copies of the board minutes from the last 6 months. Dana replied within an hour. She said, hearing is scheduled for next Thursday at 7 p.m. in the clubhouse. Board minutes request is being processed, and you should receive them within 5 business days. I forwarded the email to Marcus. He replied, good. Do not talk to Gloria between now and then. Let her think she is in control. 2 days later, I got a new violation notice in the mail. This one said I was parked in a fire lane on the night of the 19th. The photo showed my car in the same spot, but this time there was an orange cone next to my rear bumper. I walked out to the parking lot and looked. No cone. I checked my own photos from that night. No cone. I called Marcus. He said she is fabricating evidence. Take a picture of your spot right now with a timestamp and keep checking it every few hours. If she puts a cone there later, you will have proof she is planting it. I said, this is insane. He said, welcome to Heritage Oaks Landing. This is what she does. She makes the rules impossible, and then she punishes you for breaking them. The only way to win is to prove she is lying, and you are halfway there. I started checking my parking spot every 2 hours. On the third day, I saw Gloria walking through the lot at 11 p.m. with a flashlight and a canvas bag. I grabbed my phone and recorded from my bedroom window. She walked to my car, pulled an orange cone from the bag, and set it next to my rear bumper. Then she took a photo with her phone. She picked up the cone, put it back in the bag, and walked away. I had the whole thing on video. I sent it to Marcus immediately. He called me back and said, "That is a slam dunk. She just committed fraud on camera. You need to submit that video at the hearing and you need to file a police report." I said, "Will the police actually do anything?" He said, "Probably not, but the report creates a paper trail. If she keeps doing this, you will have documentation." I filed the police report the next morning. The officer who took the report was polite but skeptical. He said, "This is technically a civil issue between you and the HOA, but if she is fabricating evidence, that could be considered fraud. I will write it up, but I cannot guarantee any follow-up." I said, "I just need it on record." He said, "Understood." He handed me a case number and a copy of the report. I added it to my hearing packet. Thursday came. The hearing was in the clubhouse, a small room with folding tables and metal chairs. Gloria sat at the head table with the polo shirt guy and the yoga woman. The management company sent a representative, a younger guy in a suit who looked like he wanted to be anywhere else. Marcus sat in the back row as a witness. I sat at the respondent table with my packet of evidence. Gloria started. She said, "We are here because this resident has repeatedly violated parking policies, refused to comply with enforcement, and obstructed board duties." She pulled out a stack of printed photos and spread them on the table. She said, "These photos show multiple violations over the past 3 weeks. No decal, no guest pass, fire lane parking, unauthorized overnight parking." I said, "Can I respond?" The management rep said, "Let her finish." Gloria went on for 10 minutes, listing every alleged violation, every notice, every fine. She ended with, "This resident has shown blatant disregard for community standards, and I am recommending immediate towing and a lien on the property." The management rep said, "Okay, now you can respond." I opened my packet and laid out the screenshots of the group chat. I said 3 weeks ago, the board coordinated a targeted enforcement wave in the HOA group chat. They selected 5 residents who had complained about other issues and decided to hit us all with parking violations on the same day. Gloria wrote, "If we make it expensive enough, they will either pay or leave." I submit this as a formal exhibit. I handed the screenshots to the rep. He read them and his face changed. Gloria said, "Those are private board communications." I said, "They were posted in a group chat that includes all residents. I am a member of that group." She said, "You are taking them out of context." I said, "The context is that you plan selective enforcement." I pulled out the violation notice with the backdated photo. I said, "This notice claims the photo was taken on the 18th, but the image shows a neighbor washing his truck, which happened on the 19th. The timestamp is fabricated." I showed the rep my own photos with metadata. He looked at both and made a note. Gloria said, "Timestamps can be incorrect due to camera settings." I said, "Then why did you use it as evidence?" I pulled out the tow authorization. I said, "This authorization claims my vehicle was blocking emergency access. I was parked in a numbered residence spot 20 feet from the nearest fire lane. I have video showing the exact location and angle. I played the video on my phone." The management rep watched, then looked at Gloria. He said, "Was this an emergency access issue?" Gloria said, "The policy allows us to determine what constitutes an obstruction." The rep said, "But was there an actual obstruction?" She did not answer. He made another note. Then I pulled out the second violation notice with the cone. I said, "This notice claims I parked in a fire lane on the night of the 19th. The photo shows an orange cone next to my car. I have photos from that night showing no cone. I also have video from 3 days ago showing Gloria placing a cone next to my car at 11 p.m., taking a photo, and removing the cone." I played the video. The room went silent. The polo shirt guy leaned back in his chair. The yoga woman stared at the table. Gloria said, "That video is doctored." I said, "It has metadata and a timestamp. You are welcome to examine it." The management rep said, "I think we need to take a recess." Gloria said, "We do not need a recess. This resident is lying." The rep said, "Ma'am, I am seeing evidence of fabricated photos and selective enforcement. I need to consult with the management company before we proceed. He stepped outside and made a phone call. Gloria stood up and said, "This is a witch hunt." I said, "You fabricated evidence and posted it in official notices. That is fraud." She said, "You do not know what you are talking about." Marcus stood up from the back row and said, "Actually, he does. I used to be on this board, and I have seen you do this before. The only difference is that this time someone caught you on video." Gloria turned and said, "You are not part of this hearing." He said, "I am a homeowner and I am allowed to be here." She said, "You are a disgraced former board member who was removed for incompetence." He laughed. He said, "I resigned because I did not want to be part of whatever you were planning. And now I see I was right." The management rep came back in. He said, "I just spoke with the legal team. Based on the evidence presented, we are suspending all pending violations and fines related to this resident. We are also launching an internal review of enforcement practices. If the review finds evidence of fraud or selective enforcement, the board members involved will be removed, and the association may face legal consequences." Gloria said, "You do not have the authority to do that." The rep said, "The management contract gives us authority to intervene in cases of potential liability. This qualifies." Gloria said, "I am calling our attorney." The rep said, "You are free to do that. In the meantime, all enforcement actions against this resident are on hold." Gloria grabbed her stack of photos and walked out. The polo shirt guy and the yoga woman followed without a word. The rep looked at me and said, "I am sorry you had to deal with this. We will follow up with you in a few days once the review is complete." I said, "What happens to the fines I already paid?" He said, "If the review finds the violations were fraudulent, you will receive a full refund." I said, "And what about the board?" He said, "That depends on what we find." I walked out with Marcus. He said, "That went better than I expected." I said, "She is going to retaliate." He said, "She will try, but she just lost all her credibility. The management company is not going to back her after this." I said, "What about the other homeowners she targeted?" He said, "You need to reach out to them. If they all file disputes, the review will move faster." I nodded. Over the next week, I contacted the other 4 homeowners from the group chat. 2 of them had already paid their fines and moved on. 1 had sold his unit and left. The last one, a woman named Janet, was still fighting. She said, "Gloria hit me with 3 violations in 1 week and threatened to put a lien on my property if I did not pay. I have been trying to get a hearing for a month. I told her about the review and sent her copies of my evidence. She said, 'Can I use this?' I said, 'Absolutely.' She filed her own dispute the next day. 3 days later, the management company sent an email to all residents. It said the board was under investigation for selective enforcement and fabricated violations. It said all fines issued in the past 6 months were being reviewed, and any that were found to be fraudulent would be refunded. It said the board would not be allowed to issue new violations until the review was complete. The email ended with, "We take these allegations seriously, and we are committed to fair and transparent enforcement." Gloria responded with her own email blast. She said the investigation was a politically motivated attack, and that the management company was overstepping its authority. She said residents should ignore the review and continue paying their fines. She said anyone who participated in the investigation would be subject to additional scrutiny. Marcus forwarded me the email and said, "She is panicking. Let her dig her own grave." 2 weeks later, I got a letter from the management company. It said the review had found evidence of selective enforcement, fabricated photos, and backdated notices. It said Gloria Turner, along with the polo shirt guy and the yoga woman, had been removed from the board effective immediately. It said all fines issued under their authority were voided, and refunds would be issued within 30 days. It said a new election would be held in 60 days to replace the removed board members. It ended with, "We apologize for the inconvenience and we are committed to restoring trust in the association." I got my refund check 2 weeks after that. It was for $800 covering the fines and the tow prep fee. Janet got hers too. The other two homeowners who had already paid also received refunds. Marcus ran in the new election and won. He called me the night the results came in and said, "We are going to fix this place." I said, "Good luck." A month after the board shakeup, I was walking to my car when I saw Gloria in the parking lot. She was packing boxes into the back of a sedan. I kept walking. She saw me and stopped. She said, "I hope you are happy. You destroyed everything I built." I said, "You destroyed it yourself." She said, "I was protecting this community." I said, "You were targeting people who disagreed with you." She said, "That is your opinion." I said, "That is what the evidence shows." She closed the trunk and got in the car. She said, "You are going to regret this." I said, "I already have my refund and you are off the board. There is nothing left to regret." She drove off. I never saw her again. Marcus told me later that Gloria moved out of Heritage Oaks Landing entirely. She tried to sell her unit, but the new board issued a lien for unpaid special assessments from her time in office. She fought it for 6 months and eventually settled. The new board also passed a policy clarification that destroys Karen's favorite tactic. It said all enforcement actions must include photographic evidence with verified timestamps, and any discrepancies must be disclosed to the homeowner within 24 hours. It said all violations must be issued equally across the community, and selective enforcement complaints would trigger an automatic third-party review. It said board members found to have fabricated evidence would be immediately removed and personally liable for any damages. Janet became the new HOA president. She overhauled the parking policy entirely. No more TOW on-site rules, no more predatory vendor contracts, no more surprise fee blasts. Guest passes were extended from 24 hours to 72 hours. Resident decals were issued within 3 business days, or the HOA waived the requirement. Fire lane enforcement became the responsibility of the county, not the board. The new rules passed unanimously. I stayed in Heritage Oaks Landing for another 2 years. I never had another parking violation. I never saw another tow truck in the lot. The new board held quarterly town halls where residents could ask questions and voice complaints. Marcus served 2 terms and then stepped down. Janet stayed on as president and turned the association into one of the most transparent HOAs in Chatham County. People started moving in specifically because of their reputation. I ran into the tow truck driver one more time, about a year after the hearing. He was at a gas station near the complex. He saw me and walked over. He said, "Hey, you are the guy from Heritage Oaks." I said, "Yeah." He said, "I heard what happened with that board lady. My company dropped the contract after that. We do not work with HOAs that fake the paperwork." I said, "Good call." He said, "Yeah, it was getting messy. We had 3 other complaints that month from your neighborhood. All of them involved her." I said, "She is gone now." He said, "I know. My supervisor told me. He said it is a lot cleaner now." I said, "It is." I think about that hearing sometimes. The moment I played the video of Gloria planting the cone, the room went silent. The polo shirt guy leaned back and the yoga woman stared at the table. The management rep made his notes and Gloria insisted the video was doctored. But the minutes record the reversal and the reason. The internal review found fabricated photos, backdated notices, and selective enforcement. Gloria's bluff gets read out loud and the room reacts. She lost her position, her credibility, and her home in the community she claimed to protect. The funny part is that Gloria insists on a deadline and the timestamp proves she lied. She said the violation happened on the 18th, but the photo metadata showed the 19th. She said I was blocking emergency access, but the tow driver could not confirm it. She said the enforcement was fair, but the group chat showed she targeted specific residents. Every deadline she set, every notice she issued, every threat she made, it all came back with a timestamp that destroyed her story. If you want to see more HOA drama and neighborhood justice stories, hit that like button and subscribe. I moved out of Heritage Oaks Landing last year for a job transfer to Atlanta. The new board sent me a thank you card when I left. It said, "Your courage to stand up to selective enforcement helped us rebuild trust in this community. We wish you the best." I kept the card. If your HOA tries this, keep receipts, and I will see you next time.